and just call the letter J. They're available on iTunes. And then also, I love the Brian Setzer Orchestra Christmas albums. Those are absolutely phenomenal. So you got to get those. What do you think, Dave? What's your thoughts?
I think you've hit the nail on the head as far as books are concerned. I got nothing I can add to that. So all great recommendations. My favorite Christmas album, that's tough because I'll listen to Christmas music, and I have a CD with like a whole mix of Christmas music that I usually go to.
Hanukkah Harry's Greatest Hits?
Yeah. Or just like, well, it's like a random mix somebody made for me years ago. It's got all the good songs on it, so I listen to that. Yeah. The Monkees did a Christmas album a few years ago. Wow, I listened to that a lot. Yeah. And then, of course, Twisted Sister's Christmas album.
Oh, my God, I forgot about that. Yeah,
And the thing about that is, first of all, it's really good heavy metal music. They sneak in snippets of other songs in there to the Christmas song. Yep. So you really have to pay attention and be like, did they just slip in like some Iron Maiden or Judas Priest in there? You know, like, so they slip that in. It's just really well done. Twisted Sister never really did a studio album, but they did do a Christmas album, and that's always a fun listen.
One of the most interesting things about the Twisted Sister Christmas album, when I interviewed Dee Snider, you know what he said to me? Well, you do realize that I ripped off "O Come, O Ye Faithful" for "We're Not Gonna Take It." And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, "We're not gonna take it. Oh, come, O ye faithful." I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, and I think he might be playing that up a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
Because people have been saying that for years, and I'm not so sure he agreed with that until he got tired of hearing it and said, all right, screw it, we're going.
He's going to own it.
Right. But that's one of the great things they do. They do "Come All Ye Faithful," and then they throw in some music from "We're Not Going to Take It." They make it all, it's really a well done album.
Oh, please, Dave. I saw them in concert for the Christmas show. Dee came out as Santa Claus. He came out on a sled, and instead of reindeer, he had Minnie Kiss pulling him out.
That's awesome.
He's incredible.
That's awesome.
I know. Letter number 9 comes from Tom Campagnoli from the Wax Audio Show. And what Tom said is that he's a huge fan of our podcast and he's listened to all 71 episodes. What can I say? You guys rule. And he wanted to let us know that he just released a latest episode of the Wax Audio Show called Van Halen Rare and Unreleased. It's a deep dive into the parallel universe of unofficial Van Halen releases from the early Mammoth days through the demo sessions, outtakes, and side projects, soundtracks, and even multi-stems. He said, take a listen when you get a chance, and he sent me a link. Yes, Tom, I have it downloaded and into my iPod. I like to save that for when I go on a long drive and I can really focus on it. So I'm going to be picking my daughter up from college this weekend, so I'm definitely listening to that, so I'm saving it for that. I appreciate all your efforts, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. Give it my full attention. Dave, what do you think?
It is fantastic. I actually listened to it a couple of weeks ago. Really well done. A very well done podcast. And it's one of those things where you go in there, all right, well, what are these guys going to tell me that I don't know already? Yeah. You know, you go in there as like a Van Halen snob with your arms crossed going, what do these guys know that I don't, right? And there's always a few tidbits where you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And then you start listening to songs that you forgot about because, you just haven't listened to this stuff in a while. It was a lot of fun to listen to, and they do a great job of sorting it all out and playing clips of the songs. Good stuff. Well worth the time to listen to, and you'll enjoy it on the road trip to picking your daughter up.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Letter number 10 comes from Mike Cartledge from Plymouth, and he says, no nicknames for him. So he says here, I'd like to drop you a message to say what a great thing you guys have put together. I've been listening sometimes in reverse, which is quite weird because Eddie has passed, but he wanted to let us know that he thinks the interviews are really special, and he says he's as passionate about Van Halen as we are, and he also finds it hilarious how he ripped Sammy and that he's a money machine for sure. But he says he loves the Live Without a Net. He'll give him that, but he'll never tire of the Dave albums. And he thought that Dave reminds him of King Louie from the Jungle Book movie, and he also said that he just dragged up Van Halen's Montreal 1984 tour up on YouTube, and he says the biggest stage they've ever had, and surely it was such a treat to watch this amateur filming in all its glory. And he said here, I'm looking to see it in HD if that's possible. He says this is a rough and ready bootleg. It's just incredible with great insight and a revelation to discover something new after all these years. Yes, I think Dave should definitely do a cover of I Want to Be Like You from King Louie. I think Dave would be perfect for that song. In terms of the Montreal 1984, really that's all we have, Mike, are these fan bootlegs of these shows because Van Halen has not done any catalog releases for sure. And the Montreal one is a key one for 1984, and it really kind of gives you a flavor of what the show was like. What do you think, Dave?
The Montreal show is definitely a great example of the 84 tour, and just reminds me of my frustration as a fan that there's just none of this stuff that's been released legitimately as their back catalog. I mean, thank goodness for bootlegs, otherwise we wouldn't have anything at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Letter number 11 comes from Eric Torbick, who is the perfect letter writer from New Jersey, and he says, hey, what's up, guys? Happy holidays to you both. With respect to the archives, one piece of footage I've always wanted to see was a full Farm Aid performance. As we all know, the footage cuts off after rock and roll as Eddie is launching into his solo. What happened next? Did they play more? Did Sammy actually announce on stage that he was joining Van Halen? This baffles me how this footage has never come out in any form. Surely the cameras kept rolling. Your thoughts? Well, Eric, I have an answer for you. Yes. The answer is yes, Eric. They played Wild Thing. So after they played rock and roll, they played Wild Thing, and Sam announced that he was joining Van Halen. However, the station cut to commercial during that time, and we have been searching for that footage for many years, although it hasn't surfaced, but I'm sure that it is out there. Somebody must have shot it, but you got to remember the times. It's 1985. No one's walking around with an iPhone shooting from, the audience, but somebody has to have that footage. It's got to come out, and it's so weird because they cut to commercial when Sammy actually made the big announcement, but I did find that out. They did play Wild Thing after that, and of course, before Eddie came out, they played a mini set of Sammy Hagar songs from the VOA era. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Sammy was shooting off his mouth and cursing like a sailor, so they dropped him from the live broadcast pretty quick because they couldn't risk his filthy little mouth on the air like that. So that's why they cut him off when they did, and they didn't go back to him. So yeah, he had the perfect opportunity to announce he was joining Van Halen nationwide on TV, but he blew it. Did somebody actually ever record it and it never got broadcast? That would be interesting. Hasn't come up yet. Thought I read once that somebody from Canada swore they saw it, but I mean, who the hell knows? So
it's got to be out there somewhere. It has to be. I really believe one day it'll pop up on YouTube, but waiting for that day. Letter number 12 comes from Rick Bolocchio, and he calls himself Lono Rick. And he wanted to ask us a question. He saw Dave Grohl's cover of Jump, and he was excited about that. He said Jump was his gateway drug to Van Halen, and he says he knows the song like the back of his hand, but he has a question. He says that in the second line of the song, you got it tough, I've seen the toughest around. He says, wait a second, this is what Grohl had said in the song. He said the correct lyrics are, I've seen the toughest soul around. So I listened to it 30 times, and I fear I might be wrong. Which is it? Toughest around, or toughest all around, or toughest soul around? What say you? What does Dave say? Peace and chicken grease. Rick Bolocchio. Oh, he says he pronounced his last name like Pinocchio. Bellocchio. Okay, gotcha. Well, listen, Rick, here's a clip of Dave saying the line from the original song.
You got it tough. I've seen the toughest soul around.
Now, I always thought he said, I've seen the toughest soul around. I have to be honest with you, that's what I thought. But in researching it, re-listening to it, and I want you to know, Rick, I went out of my way to not only look up the lyrics, listen to Dave's version over and over again, but then I went beyond, and I started listening to Sammy sing it, and Gary sing it, and Dave sing it live to try to get like a flavor of what the actual thing, and apparently it is toughest all around. I really thought he said toughest soul around. What do you think, Dave?
I always thought it was I've seen the tough so down. So what the hell do I know?
Are you serious? Tough so
Oh,
down?
yeah.
What does that even mean?
Obviously. It's a David Lee Roth lyric.
All right.
Are you serious?
Okay,
Come on.
all right. Well, yeah, that's apparently it's the toughest all around. Letter number 13 comes from James Pacheco, and he says, I get the hate on Eric Clapton dissing Eddie 25 years ago, but how soon everybody forgets all about the mud that Valerie Bertinelli brought out in her book. It was worse than Sammy, and I'm not a Sammy backer. What say you? Thank you for all the great entertainment you guys keep providing, James Pacheco. You know what, James? I totally agree. Valerie's book is fire. There is some scathing shit on there. Let me tell you something. You don't want your ex-wife writing a book about you. That's for sure. That's not a good thing, but it is out there. And my response is yikes, because I totally agreed. I think Valerie's book has some real dark shit in it. So that is rough. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I have not looked at Val's book in a long time.
Yeah.
But I do remember that at the least, it wasn't any worse or better, depending on your point of view, than Sam's book. But the interesting part is that Ed seemed not to be happy with Sam after that, but he gave Val a complete pass.
Yeah, totally.
Even though she had written some stuff that was just as damning. It's interesting. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've never read Val's first book, you probably should, because there's some interesting Van Halen related stuff in there for sure.
Yeah, it's called Losing It, by the way. That's for sure. So, last letter of the night, letter number 14, Dave's absolute favorite. This is the last letter he'll be dealing with in 2021. This is coming from Stephen from Canada. He says, Dave has added 4 more Vegas shows. Lots of people say he doesn't need the money, so why? Fans felt a little bit scammed due to Dave marketing his final 5 shows as retirement, and now he's added more. Some fans spent thousands of dollars buying tickets, booking hotels, airplane tickets to see Dave perform for the last time ever. I know he made a good income for the 3 tours of Van Halen in 2007, 2015, and 2012, but apart from that, Dave hasn't made big money. The Inc., the original business, seems to have disappeared too. He invested $7 million in that, so maybe he has to make up losses. What is your view? Well, listen, I'm very skeptical now about how much he could possibly make at those shows. I mentioned this in Van Halen News. I mean, how much could he possibly make in the 9 shows that he's doing, right? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. So I don't know if he truly needs the money or if it's just a fun thing for him, but I don't think Dave needs the money. I think Dave is fine with money. Not only that, but you remember he came from money. I'm sure he even had inheritance that was, worthwhile, and I don't think Dave's hurting. I don't know where everybody gets this thing, like Dave's on fucking Skid Row or something. It's ridiculous. You have no idea. He's at a high echelon band for how many years, had a successful solo career for many years. The guy has cash. Even if he dumped $7 million into Inc. the Original, he wouldn't do that if he didn't have the cash to do it. Maybe Inc. the Original's doing well. I have no idea. I don't get those numbers. What do you think, Dave?
I think he's doing just fine. I don't think he's hurting for money.
Yep. Well, that wraps up the mailbag segment. And we are on to our interview with Paul Brannigan, the author of Unchained, the Eddie Van Halen Story, the book that was also called Eruption, the Eddie Van Halen Story, that's been delayed for many years. Paul gets into a deep dive discussion on everything in this book that covers the entire Van Halen story from top to bottom, and there's lots of interesting stuff in there. Paul's a very interesting character. Like I mentioned in Van Halen News, give it a chance and stick it out and listen through. He has a bit of a thick accent, but once you get used to the rhythm of his accent, you'll totally understand him. He's a very intelligent and insightful guy. Very, very nice, very fun, was very straightforward, answering all our questions. You would definitely want to check out his book, Unchained, the Eddie Van Halen Story. And that's all coming up next. Take a listen.
My name is Billy Joe Armstrong, and my first concert was Van Halen in 1984. And I was 12 years old, and just how huge that was for me. And I remember just going to see that show and being so excited. And my cousin took me and my brother. So me and my brother just went and got lost inside this arena. It was at the Cow Palace. this sounds really funny, but I was so little and I was in the crowd. And then all of a sudden when Van Halen started playing, I'm looking up and I'm going, holy shit, that's my fucking hero right now. And like these tears started coming out of my eyes. And then I remember I was surrounded by like women. So I had like boobs that were hitting my head because I was so little, and my feet came off of the ground and I started having like a panic attack. And I remember